Hello and welcome to Season 2, Episode 5 of the Like, Click and Share podcast with me, Darren Winter, your host, and Gemma Walton. How are you doing, Gemma?
I'm all right, Darren. How are you?
Yeah, doing good, thank you. It's been a little bit of a while, hasn't it, since we've been chatting. But today we're going to be talking about marketing fundamentals. So this is all going back to basics about marketing. So the reason we're talking about this is because I've spoken to a few different business owners and reading lots of different articles and blogs around that. Like 2023, it's been maybe a challenging year. Lots of uncertainty about kind of what consumers and clients might be doing. Understanding should we just do what we did last year? Did that work or did it not work? And maybe sitting on the fence. Maybe 2022 was a year that you started off with lots of energy and then you kind of fizzled out. With motivation and just like getting on top of your plans before the year finished. So if that kind of applies to you, then this podcast is definitely going to be of help. So we're going to be just providing some advice, but we're also going to be kind of like chatting through. I've just kicked off with just something really, really simple here. So I think that, if I had a client that came to me saying my business is there, or think of starting a business. How am I going to get out there? How am I going to get noticed? How am I going to build my sales? How am I going to get lead generation or build it to a good level? These are all questions that all of us face from time to time. So the first thing I think you need to do is take a review of your current marketing efforts. Now, if you're new, then your marketing efforts are going to be pretty much zero. You might be talking to friends and families, maybe a few people about what you intend to do, but otherwise it's going to be zero. But for others who've got the business on the go, look at the channels that you're posting on for social media. Are they working for you? Are you getting the engagement? If you're not getting messages, it may not be that the platform is not right for you. It might be just you might need a different angle to take on it. So for instance, if you're just posting images with a sales caption and a CTA just to visit the website or call you, that might not be enough anymore. So you might need to talk about maybe customer reviews or start sharing more other social content on your channel, trying to be more helpful and informative with content, maybe use some promotions. So sometimes it's not always just about kind of the channel. So those are some things that perhaps you could look at. But there will be some other channels out there as well that might be more applicable for your business. And we've talked about this on the last couple of podcasts. So like channels like Twitter, that may have been kind of relevant, maybe 18 months to 2 years ago for B2B lead generation. And a lot of the business is still there, but the user kind of engagement rates are definitely declining. But there are other options. I'm going to throw this open to Gemma because I've done lots of talking here. So it'd be good to bring Gemma in. What do you reckon of that, Gemma? What other platforms do you think people could consider?
I think it depends on like the business, what you do. I think there's a lot of things around like TikTok and Instagram, Reels. I don't think short form vertical videos are going away. I think it's something that's going to be used a lot more going forward. So if you're not doing it, then you need to think about introducing it into your marketing strategy. But I think what people want, it's authentic. And I think you've got to work that out yourself, what works for you and what doesn't, because you could copy what one of your competitors is doing, but your audience might not believe that it's you because it's not something that they've seen you do before, or it's not something that they expect, or you don't come across right in the video. I think there's a lot of different things. I think it's working out what's right for you. I think you've got to have a bit of a plan, but I don't think like planning out your marketing activity for a year or 2 years, like you used to do before. Like I think those days are gone, because I think now you've got to be able to change what you're doing, look at what's working, what isn't working, and then like mix it up a bit. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a really good call, and I think especially when you were saying that when you're having to write out posts so far in advance and schedule what you're going to say. And I think some of that you can do for just general messages, but I think that when you need to maybe, some people don't like the word pivot, but you do need to make things like much more contextually based. So for instance, if you're coming up to Easter or Mother's Day, Father's Day, all these different occasions, then it's a missed opportunity not to kind of like use that. Valentine's Day, for instance. And it's not about kind of doing, again, just sales posts, like here's 15% off or 20% off, but it's, maybe just doing a kind of a play on words or something, kind of we love our team, or, maybe a picture of them, about, and maybe something you've done in your organization. So it's not always about selling, but it's just showing a different side of the business. And like you say, being authentic and showing yourself. And that, even in our business, that's sometimes quite difficult to do, because if there's only maybe one or two of you in the business, or if your business is like similar to kind of a lot of what we do is like developing courses. Like, well, how can you make that, how can you put like the faces behind it? And there are things you can do. You can show things like, your research that you're doing, maybe kind of share some of the insights and facts. We've just been talking about some kind of a plan that we're going to be doing ourselves this year before we came on air doing this podcast, trying to think of new ideas, and to stand out a little bit more and to make it interesting, because that's what socials is all about. If you don't make it interesting, well, why would anybody want to waste their time kind of like looking at your content? And that goes the same, for websites, content. If it's not helpful, blog posts, if it's just the same content that everybody else is posting, then there's nothing really new there. And then that kind of, I suppose, spills over into your business then as well. It's like, well, people think, well, if you're not doing anything different, it's like maybe just nothing really attractive for me to even look at your business. So it's interesting how people make assumptions. So doing that kind of general review of your marketing efforts, look at your costs, look at the time, look at who you're employing, your own efforts and that, write them all down, exactly what you're doing. And it could end up being like, you might want to look at maybe doing more networking, more emails, more messages directly, to build relationships online. There's lots of different strategies that you can look at, as well as paid advertising. So general review of all your marketing efforts. And then the next one is really as simple as setting some small goals. So what is it that you need to do? So is it just an increase in sales by 10%? Is it increase in leads? Is it increase number of website visits, increase number of followers? It might be two or three things. But just keep them fairly simple. Look at what traffic that you've done beforehand. Look at maybe Googling or researching what the industry averages are. Obviously, we were talking to somebody. We went to like a Yorkshire village a few weeks ago, and it wasn't even, we don't know how we got into digital marketing, but he was kind of saying that he just opened his business and he was talking about email marketing. He said he didn't have time to do newsletter, and he goes, well, I only get like a 30% open rate anyway. And I said to him, well, the industry average is like 17 or 18%. It's like, you're doing that really good. Yeah. Some people like really bite their arm off for that. So have a look, you might, what you think are really, is really bad. Look at what everybody else is doing, and then kind of you might be seeing that you might be doing like much better. And it's not a bad thing if you get busy. Take a break if you have to, and then come back to it. It's always difficult because you're trying to build consistency into everything, and the platforms do reward you for consistency on socials or emails or everything like that. But if you're truly busy with your business, focus on what's going to give you growth. And if it's not email marketing at that particular time, then so be it. It's not a bad thing to take a break. And then think about, you've done your review, you've got some goals, then how are you going to achieve it? So just breaking down maybe 2 or 3 actions, maybe a couple more. How do you think you're going to achieve those goals? So if it's, if your goal is about increasing sales by 10%, look at what you're doing at the moment. What could you tweak? What efforts could you do? Could you do an extra 15 minutes on your social media each week to do some more follows, liking other people's posts, maybe commenting on other people's posts? It's not always about creating new content. It could be maybe sending just one extra newsletter, or maybe sending the same newsletter to people who didn't open the newsletter the first time around. So it's, again, just not doubling up your efforts, but maybe looking at things you can try and tweak and enhance, and maybe speak to the platform providers to get some ideas, maybe Google or research some ideas, maybe work with a professional, ask for some extra help. It might only cost you maybe like $100 or £100 or something just to get some advice. But that could translate into thousands for your business if you can get the right advice. So you've done your review, set some more goals, looking at how you're going to achieve this. And then you just need to implement those and then review the efforts, and then look at kind of what's worked well, what hasn't worked well, and then make some amends, and then kind of repeat that kind of like cycle. Have you got anything else that you want to add to that, Gemma?
I think as well, recently I've seen a lot of people sharing stuff about don't be afraid to keep posting. I mean, obviously not posting the same video every time, but don't be afraid if you've got a good video that works to keep using it, because not everybody's online at the same time. So not everybody's going to see it, and not everybody does scroll, so if you've got something and you like it and it works, then don't be afraid. I've seen a lot of stuff on YouTube Shorts, a lot of stuff on TikTok where people are resharing stuff, and it really helps with engagement, helps with visibility. I think it's about being consistent, but it's quality over quantity, isn't it? It's gone are the days where you have to post like 2 posts a day, or you might have done like 8 or 10 posts on Twitter, depending on like what it was you were doing, 1 post a day or 1 post every other day, as long as the quality is there, is better. Because I think you can take a break. I mean, I have done a little bit for me personally, but just because I've been doing so much stuff for other people. But people do want to see good content to engage with. There's no point in just posting something that can be sometimes more damaging, can't it, than like waiting and pulling something better together. But I think we've said it before, one of the podcasts, we're almost going back to that whole like people from people. So they want to see the behind the scenes. They want to see Darren. They want to see Gemma. They want to know, do I relate to them? Do I like what they're saying? Do I think I get on with them? Do I like their values? Do I like what their business is doing? I've seen a lot of stuff recently about like ethical marketing and how you're doing things, So, and the other big thing was being more focused on your customer and what your customer wants going forward. And I think that's a key one for businesses. You've got to really understand who your customer is, where they hang out, and what it is that they want from you, what they're interested in. And I think that's a big part of marketing going forward.
I think they're all really, really great bits of tips and advice, that especially when you kind of like focus on like customers, and you need to really, really understand where they are. And once you've understood kind of where they are, then you do need to go and find more of those types of people. So think about how you kind of, excuse me, think about how they engage with you, ask them where they came from, and listen carefully, like you say, to what they're looking for. And attitudes and that are kind of like shifting a lot. So just because you did something 18 months ago, doesn't mean to say now the same kind of process is going to work for you. Even the products in that you might need to have to adapt. And we were talking about this, weren't we, just before we started, and not being too frightened of kind of adapting your offering, or maybe kind of like testing out, whether people their appetite is maybe going more back to one-to-one base or team-based things, rather than doing everything digital. So people kind of have changed like through COVID. So some people prefer like digital services, some people prefer the personal services, and you just have to kind of understand what's going to work well for your business. And you may well have to do a hybrid of both. But again, understanding that, if you need additional people to come into the business, then there's no good just hiring them. you need to think it through in terms of like, that this is going to be an extra cost. Have I got the sales there to back it up, or have I got enough money to make sure I can pay them for a year to test this out if this is going to work or not? And it's surprising how many businesses and business owners don't do that planning. They just think, well, I'll hire somebody in and it will either work or it won't work. It's like, it's a real shame, because if you can hire somebody in with a plan to get them to say, right, this is what I need you to do, this is the goal, this is how we're going to do it, and this is what I need you to do, and this is how we're going to review stuff on a monthly basis, there's probably more likelihood of that them plan succeeding and your business growing. But it just takes a lot of resource and a lot of extra effort, than more than what you think it's going to take. It's not a case of hiring somebody or hiring an agency or an influencer and then handing them everything and leaving them to get on with it. You have to monitor it, and you have to be in there. You have to have that buy-in with it, because it is like your business, always part of your responsibilities, making sure we get there. So the second part of this podcast is interesting, because I said to Gemma that I noticed an article on a leading marketing website, and it was a sponsored advertorial about buying followers. And it's like, I didn't really know that still buying followers was really a big thing. And both of us are, I don't think we're not really pro buying followers. I think both of us don't really see the point. So if you buy followers and you kind of disagree with this, and this has really like helped you like build your, achieve your goals, or maybe it's for a campaign, then definitely let us know. But I'm kind of struggling to see I've never really understood that the vanity of having maybe like 10,000 followers or 20,000 followers is, yes, you've got those followers there as a figure, but if they're not engaging with your platform, the only other incentive I can think of is that when you get, is it still the rule on Instagram, you've got 10,000 followers, then it allows you then to post clicks, and the clicks work on the posts, or I think that's still the thing, isn't it, for Instagram? I don't think they've changed that rule.
I'm not sure. Because I mean, you can share.
10,000 clicks. That's the only thing I can think of why, apart from the fact it's like, well, you've got it makes you into thinking you're a bigger business, but it makes no sense. I don't understand where you've got 40,000 people that are just not listening to you.
But how do you know that you buy? How do you know that you're buying the right audience?
Yeah.
I'd be interested to hear from people who've done it and that it's worked, and what the process and stuff was. Because I mean, we used to get a lot of messages saying you could buy this many followers for like $5 or whatever it was, but I haven't seen any emails like that or messages on social for so long. I mean, probably 2, 3, maybe even 4 years ago was probably the last time I got something like that through on like my socials or on our socials. So I'm curious to see what it is about that, because I didn't even think something like that still existed, because I thought it was more around engagement. I thought the platforms themselves were like not like punishing you, but do you know what I mean? Like if you had a load of followers that didn't engage, because there was a big thing years ago about like zombie followers and stuff, and them being, I know Elon Musk wanted to delete people like that from Twitter completely. The people who just might have an account but just go on to do research or just snoop around, they don't actually engage. But I'm really curious to see what I'll have to have a look at that article. I'm curious to see what the point is of it, apart from just to say, oh, well, I've got this many followers. But then people, if you know anything about social media, people would look up and down at your posts and see that you haven't got the engagement that backs up the followers that you've got. So
it looks weird, doesn't it? It's I've always said that I think like it's better talking to a few people that really care about your business than to those who, trying to talk to those who just don't really care. I've just had a quick, as you were talking, I was listening to what you were saying, but also just double checking it. I think it is still the thing that you get. You can do your swipe up and a click, activate the click function. So maybe like for very busy e-commerce like businesses, that might be a thing just to help in terms of a sales technique, get to that 10,000 mark. But interestingly, I don't understand why the platforms are still allowing that kind of activity and that to happen. And I think it's just not a great. I don't think it's a very positive like tactic. And for me, it's the same as I've never really been kind of pro into buying like data. And because all the email platforms, the ones that I know, I've definitely worked with, like HubSpot, SharpSpring, ActiveCampaign, all of those, MailChimp, they all prohibit, like as marketing people. Yeah, it's like, well, it is a tactic, but it's like, well, it's interesting. So it's such a grey area, and it's interesting whether kind of. I've heard of one. I've heard of somebody that I know. They've bought the mailing list. They've used it, and it's kind of like it has. But it's actually helped them getting more sales. But it's definitely improved like their conversion rate for like open rates for like email. So I can understand it because you're buying people, and then people maybe not heard of you before. Then I can kind of see that, and it is kind of similar to Google because Google Ads, so they'll kind of hunt at people that you're looking for, and they'll display your ad in front of you. And it's kind of similar to email marketing, but apart from that, you've actually physically got their data. So I'm surprised some of these things like are still sort of going on. So yeah, let us know if you've bought data before. Has it worked for you? Tell us like your good stories, maybe like some horror stories as well. I've read some interesting.
I have had a lot more people reaching out about data lists recently. Probably over the last 6 months, I've seen a big increase, and I don't know if that's to do with obviously the changes to data privacy and like GDPR and stuff. I don't know if that's affecting people and they're trying to get rid of stuff quickly and generate income. I don't know.
And I think that is some of it. I think it's like, let's try and generate like sort of quick revenue, quick turnover. But like you say, like, I mean, there's definitely things that you can ask, so questions you can ask as trusted providers. You can, you've been doing this for a long time and you're paying more for their services for sure. But on the whole, because the amount of data breaches and the amount of the theft of data, certainly over the last 6 months to a year, is now it's just happening so often. Then you have to question where all the data is like coming from. And I'm forever being added to mailing lists for random things that I'm always getting, and it's like it's shocking and it's just really annoying. So you could end up really kind of upsetting the people, the very clients that you're trying to attract. So yeah, just be careful. I think that's with that one. So I'm definitely anti-buying followers because I don't understand it. And the email marketing, I think it has to be really kind of definitely, you have to be sure it's the definite persona type that you're looking for. But so it's not equal.
In the future, I think there'll be like a ban on buying in data lists.
Yeah,
I think with the changes to like Google by the end of the year and the tracking cookies going away and different like places in America, different states are implementing their own privacy laws. I think going forward, I think you'll not be able to buy in data lists, and I think you might even struggle to keep your own. Because of like the data breaches and stuff. I think you'll have to prove that you've got a certain amount of security or things set up. If you're using people's data and you're reaching out to people, I think it's going to become a lot more stricter because people are really clamping down on their privacy and stuff, aren't there? And people not being able to see things and they don't want to share their information, whereas they would have given you your email address before, like for a lead magnet or whatever, whereas people I think are a lot more reluctant now because of data breaches, because of things like that have happened with Facebook and the TalkTalk. They had a big data breach, I think, a few years ago. There's been so many, hasn't there? So,
I'm shocked to have this year, for lots of other political reasons of things going on across the world, that there's definitely been a lot more sort of data breaches and thefts and that happen of data. So it's definitely becoming more commonplace. and it can happen, I think, to pretty much any organisation. I mean, Royal Mail, so not Post Office, but the Royal Mail in the UK. So they're not being able. They had a cyber attack, and I don't think there'd been any particular theft of data, but the attack has left them paralysed, being sort of struggling to send like parcels overseas. And they've not paid the ransom money, so they're having to adapt their service to get them back on their feet. While we've got this hanging over their head, but really, so cybersecurity is a really big thing. We're not cybersecurity experts, definitely by any means, and you can very easily tap it any organisation. Somebody just clicks on just one, bad link, which enables access for somebody to get into the system, and this is why you're getting. I mean, at the moment, I was getting so much spam on my personal email address. I've never had it as so many coming through. It's never been as bad. So and you can do all the reporting. You can try and train your email client. You can have all the software and stuff, but it's still like pretty coming through like heavy and hard. So hopefully the main kind of systems will update themselves and it'll just disappear again like it usually does. But it is pretty bad at the moment. So definitely be careful on cybersecurity and that, and make sure that if you are using digital services that they're all pretty much trusted. Like use the big platforms. If you're using those, it's unlikely, or there's a reduced likelihood of things being stolen. If you're using the very, very cheap services, then you get what you pay for, I guess. Finally, blue tick. That's been announced from Meta. I think it's live in Australia and New Zealand at the moment. I think it's about $12 a month. We're going to be kind of very close to that, depending on what currency you're using. It sounds interesting. So you can have it enables you to have this blue tick, so shows authority, can be trusted. It's always going to give you some extra perks. So maybe like have somebody at Facebook you can just contact if you have problems, improve your reach and visibility. Would you pay it, Gemma?
I don't know. I think I want to see like how it works and what the benefits are of paying that money for it. I think if you are getting access to somebody from Facebook to help you, either with your business or making sure that everything's set up properly and stuff, then I think it probably is, because you don't get to speak to somebody like that who knows the ins and outs of the platform and how the algorithm works up front, kind of thing, or any changes that are coming. But I don't know. I think at some point the people will be able to get around that. So people with blue ticks will not really be proper people. Like the bot accounts that you've had set up before. It might take a bit longer for them to get there. I don't know. Would you?
It's interesting because they need to do it is to generate income for the business. And I do think it's cheeky that you're using a service and like you're charging for somebody to, like, you're providing a service, but then in able to get the most out of that service, you're charging for somebody to get help to use it. Some people might say that, well, it's not because it's a free platform, so I'll get that side of it. It costs money to run. It's the same argument as free banking, isn't it? In the UK, we enjoy free banking. In Europe, most people tend to pay like maybe €10 a month or something to run their bank account. But in the UK, it's just unheard of. So, like, how do they make money? Well, they do it through loans and other kind of ways.
I pay for my bank account.
Do you pay for yours? Do you? I don't pay for mine.
No, I pay for mine because you get the travel insurance and the the breakdown cover, and it's like it's not just European, it's international travel. So rather than like buying the yearly thing for each of those, it's probably like better. There are other things that you get as part of it as well.
Yes. And it's interesting. So I think the answer to your question is I probably would pay the £10 or £12 or $12, whatever it's going to be, because I think that when there are some real grey areas of Facebook when you're trying to do things like add in admins trying to do things like close down a page. You might lose a password to a page, and you need to prove your identity to get a page back because somebody, one of your employees was running it and then left. There's all these really kind of odd scenarios that happen. And you need somebody at Facebook to get over some of these kind of like challenges. And it's always been so difficult to find somebody that help you. And unless you want to spend money on ads, then they're just not interested in talking to you. And if they're listening, it's true, because we've had plenty of clients try it and we've tried, and there's some very helpful people there. But unless you're spending money, like, they don't want to know. So I think for that reason, I think it's probably a really good thing. So it's interesting what they're trying to do. But I like your example as well, and maybe you can kind of see that maybe this where it could go, that you might pay this sort of $12 or £12 or something, and then there might be access to other kind of services you might get as part of like a package of like digital services, and nobody's doing that at the moment. So which I think is really interesting. So we might start to see some more collaborations, and some of the bigger organizations might start teaming up. And that helps, keep people on the platform and using the platform as well. So that's the doorbell. Nothing to do with the podcast. Maybe it's close to our end of time as well.
Maybe it's the Facebook police coming by you because they don't like what you say.
Oh no. So, but yeah, let us know about the blue tick. Would you pay? Do you think it'll help your business? It would be, or just help you as a user?
I want to know a bit more. I want to know a bit more about it.
Well, I'm going to put a link in below. I'm going to put the link to that marketing article, but also going to put a link to the better article as well. I think I'd seen it on qz.com, which have some really interesting articles on there, and their thoughts on it. So yeah, do take a read below. That's all we've got time for on this episode. We'll be back soon with another episode of the Like, Click and Share podcast. Please let us know if you'd love this podcast. Like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, leave a comment, do whatever you can, show some support. We'd love to receive that and hear from you if you'd like to be a guest, or if there's a subject you'd like us to talk about. Again, just get in touch. All our details are in the show notes below. But bye for now.
Bye for now.